everyone, Amy here, just checking in midweek to talk about your argument rough draft workshop discussion. I'm just going to say ahead of time, knowing myself, that I may not be able to fit this all into one 15-minute video, but I really want to be able to cover my suggestions in depth and also hopefully touch on almost every single one of your papers a little bit. So I'm gonna just take my time, and if I have to make a second video, that'll be the case, and you'll see both of them posted at once. I did post my wrap up for the discussions that took place prior to the break, so that's here in the news. Be sure to check that out because I've got some suggestions there as well. Almost all of you did get your rough drafts posted by midnight last night, so great job. Amber, I'm going to call you out a little bit. You're the only one that did not. So if you get your rough draft posted today or tomorrow, you can still avoid the 10% penalty, although you'll be taking points off in your discussion itself. But do try to avoid the 10% penalty on the paper, because it's a 200-point essay, and so 10% of that is 20 points, and it prevents you from being able to get an A. So it's kind of a big penalty. And for the rest of you, don't forget to do your comments on each other's drafts, because that is also part of the requirement that would lead you to lose percentage points off of the paper itself. So just make sure we're finishing strong. This is our very last discussion, so this is the last time you'll have to provide feedback to each other. So you know, just get it done and you'll get the points. Okay, and then just also connecting back to our to-do list. Pretty straightforward this week. Don't forget the videos, the reading matrices, and then of course our discussion is already underway. So let me jump into that now. Go all the way down. Look, it's our very last discussion. Oh my goodness. Okay, so and then I'll just go ahead and remind you now, as you're doing your review, don't forget to do the in-text comments, and then here are all the questions that you need to answer. You need to touch on all 10 of these things in complete sentences and upload those responses as well as your in-text comments when you do your reviews for tomorrow night at midnight. Okay, so I did get a chance to look over all of your drafts, and I would say the strongest thing I see happening right now is that you all have really strong research, and so I'm pleased to see that, proud of the work that you've done. I think that kind of reflects the emphasis we put on formulating research questions, understanding types of sources in weeks 7 and 8, so I'm really glad to see that manifesting in your actual drafts. Great job with that. And then another good thing I see is that most of you are attempting some kind of surprising reversal, although executing that fully to varying degrees. And so I'll have some suggestions for that as well. But the first thing I want to kind of touch on is how to distinguish between a essay that just presents a bunch of information and an essay that's a true argument. So like I said, you all have done really good research, and almost all of you have really strong information to provide to your audiences, but I'm not totally convinced that all of you are completely working that information into an argument itself. Right now, some of the essays still lend themselves a little bit more toward more of an informative purpose than a persuasive one. So I'll touch on that directly, but hopefully my comments in general today will help you see things that you can do to achieve a little bit more persuasion than just presentation of the information that you found throughout your research. So the very first thing is to make sure that all of the information that you do include is tied in some way to points that you're trying to make to support an overall thesis. So I'm going to start with Nikki's essay here and kind of show you what I'm talking about. Get it over on this side. Okay, great job with MLA formatting, by the way. Most of you were able to do that successfully, so I was really pleased to see that. Obviously, Nikki's essay is about assisted suicide. There is some information about the controversy here in the introduction, which is a good strategy, although you don't want to spend too much time presenting and refuting counter arguments at this point yet, because you haven't given us your thesis yet. And then again, some background going back to the controversy with should a person be allowed to do this. But I can see where this may be a surprising reversal, but I'm actually having a hard time because I think that, Nikki, you're actually trying to argue in favor of assisted suicide, but you're not really coming out and saying that in a true thesis here. And then likewise, when we get to the paragraphs, you have these kind of headings, but most of the paragraphs are really just a presentation of a bunch of information with more of what I would call topics as opposed to persuasive topic sentences that connect to your thesis, which is a persuasive strategy that you would want to achieve. And so let me go down to the conclusion here and show where it's a little bit different. So here, Nikki, is where you actually do start to present your position on the issue. You say I'm assuming not just the debate, but you're talking about the arguments against physician-assisted suicide here are theoretical at best. Statistics prove the process works. This is a counter-argument that you're refuting here. People live longer. That's another point. If it affects quality of life, they should be able to make this decision. Having rules will protect the patient and the physician. So these are things that I'm pointing out here that could be reasons to support your argument in favor of physician-assisted suicide, but right now the way the argument is structured doesn't really do that. So again, here's another counter-argument. This is just a factual piece of information, whereas in your conclusion you should just be really recapping main points in your thesis. This is another reason here. This is another reason here. And it should ultimately belong to that person. That's another reason. So instead of kind of weaving back and forth between point, counter-argument, point, counter-argument, I would say sum up your points in a particular order and then tie them to a central claim that's either evaluative or proposal, because right now, if this is your central claim, this is a more definitional claim, just saying this choice belongs to the person, or really what we would call a claim of fact, which is the most basic type of claim. And so in order to tie all of these points together, I would much rather see some kind of higher order claim like a value claim or a proposal, to say, you know, based on all of these points, therefore, what should we do about it? And I assume that you're leaning toward the legalization of assisted suicide, but you never actually say that here. And the points are so scattered that it becomes difficult to tell how they all might culminate toward an overall claim. So one place to start, Nikki, I think would be to go back through these headings that you have for your paragraphs and see how those match up with the points that you are outlining in your conclusion here, and in as much as they do match up, that can be a start to provide that succinct claim as long as you're able to list them all in one or two sentences and then attach them to some kind of overall proposal like we should legalize this nationwide. So and then you would need to go back and reformulate these headings into actual sentences that connect to your central claim, like you know, the first reason why we should legalize assisted suicide, or excuse me, why the United States should legalize assisted suicide is because it's a civil rights issue. Everyone has the right to decide when they want to die. See here again, this is more of a topic and then a bunch of information than an actual argument. So I'll try to show you another example of that. I did see in Chris's essay some of this going on as well. Chris, I think you have a really cool topic. I've never seen anyone write about this topic before, but it's obviously personal to you and I think pretty interesting. So good job coming up with this topic on your own. But here you say some negative things about participation trophies, but you don't really tie all your points together toward an overall higher order claim like a proposal. I assume you're leading toward something like we should discontinue the use of participation trophies, but again, you don't really come right out and say that here, so it's unclear to your audience at this point if that's really your argument. And then even more important is that all of these topic sentences start with either a factual piece of information or just a general question, as opposed to topic sentences that would connect to your actual argumentative claim, whatever that might be, like a proposal. So instead of starting your paragraphs with information like this, you want to start with a transition, a connection to the overall central claim, and a presentation of the point that you're going to be talking about in that paragraph. So, you know, the third reason why participation trophies should be discontinued is that most parents are against this or something, whatever you're going to be talking about in this paragraph. And then list those points in the same order as they appear in your body paragraphs in your thesis at the beginning of the essay. And what that does when you have the topic sentence there is it kind of logically connects things for your audience, because if the audience reads a point and then reads a bunch of information, it's just logical that they will naturally interpret that information as supporting the point that you presented first. And that's just kind of the way our brains work. But if you don't present the point in a topic sentence, then the reader is kind of left to make of this information whatever they make of it, and it kind of puts the burden on them to interpret things, and that's not what you want when you're arguing, because when you're arguing you want to show people how to interpret the information so that they interpret it in a way that supports the argument that you are going for. Okay, so be sure to provide the thesis in the beginning of your essay. Try to get it down to just 1 or 2 sentences, and most importantly, use that to focus the topics of your paragraphs and connect to it as you move in and out through your paragraphs in the same order as the points appear in the thesis at the beginning. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit too about the introductions that you all had, because they were vastly different from one essay to the next. So some of you did a really good job just providing some background and moving right into your thesis. Some of you were lacking a thesis altogether. Some of you only had the thesis and no background. So let me pull up Jessica's essay here and we can take a look at it. It's a very strong essay. But you can see Jessica doesn't really get to her thesis until the end of the second paragraph. Good job with surprising reversal, by the way, as well as leading into that in the next paragraph. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But right now there's a ton of background information. It's broken up into 2 paragraphs. And so as a reader, I have to go a really long time before knowing what to make of any of this. You know, I don't know until way down on the second page if I'm supposed to see this as a good thing or if I'm supposed to see this as a bad thing, or which side this writer's on, and how it all connects to whatever the purpose of this essay is, because I don't even know what the purpose is of your writing until I get to the thesis here. So I would say definitely combine this into 1 paragraph, and probably even condense it a little bit, because this is quite a bit of background information. And so I wonder if some of this information, for example, about the different types of medication could be worked into maybe your counter-argument paragraphs or something like that, just to condense the introduction a little bit and help you get to your thesis more expeditiously, more directly, so that the audience knows pretty close to the beginning, okay, here's what we're going to be focusing on, here's the purpose of this essay and what this writer is trying to achieve. And then the only other thing I would say here is that you do need to cite all this information. A lot of you had really good background information in your introduction, but you did not cite any of it. And so that's a problem. As we saw before I made that change just now, Jessica has 1 citation here at the end of the paragraph, but it's not enough to just have 1 citation at the end. You need to have citations in every single sentence that contains information that comes from a source, and I need to know which source it came from, and if you have page numbers, that information needs to be included in the parenthetical as well. And you know, so even though it may seem redundant, maybe all this information came from Wilson, but it's still conventional to put the citations in every single sentence, just like you would have author tags in every single sentence of a summary, for example. And let me see, another good example of that was in Luke's essay, where, Luke, you did have a citation, but I'm afraid I may have confused you, because the linking to your sources is really only appropriate for the blogging genre, so you actually wouldn't want to do a link here, and instead do parenthetical or attributive tags for your in-text citations, kind of like you're doing down here. For an academic essay in this genre, it's not appropriate to do links, and it's not enough of a citation to link, so you still need that in-text citation. And then just one other thing, make sure the terminal period at the end of the sentence always comes after the parenthetical, because otherwise your reader will interpret this citation as being part of the next sentence as opposed to this previous sentence. And then along with that, quotes by themselves are not complete sentences, even if they were a complete sentence in the original. Once you put them in your own writing, it's kind of a different context, and so you can't just lift a complete sentence quote out of the original and into your own work. You need to add a few things in your own words that could be an attributive tag to kind of introduce it and work it into the flow of your own sentence.